Okay, are we live there now? Let me see. I'm not sure now. Let me see. So we may be live. We need to check. We need to stay calm. And we are live apparently. Okay, hello Kieran Shield, Gary, Conrad Kennedy, Gary, David Cannan, Andrew Penny. I appear to be live. Will you just confirm that you can hear me and all? Can you hear me, guys? Yeah? Good stuff. Okay, good stuff. So, I mean, if you have any questions there in relation to whatever, fire away and I'll do my best to deal with them. You can still hear me now. You can still hear me, yeah? Okay, good stuff. Good stuff. If you have any questions now, how much is the investment course? The investment course is... That's the investment course to do with both property and shares. The price I think is $297, and there's an easy payment plan. You can pay, I think it's 4 payments of €79 or thereabouts. So I think that's the price. But if you have a look at my website, businessandlegal.ie, there's a page there which explains the investment course, what it's about and so on. Basically, it's a distillation of 35 years of my experience of investing in property and so on. So, over 40s life navigational. How important is temperament to being a solicitor? Not very, because I wouldn't have the Mae West in terms of temperament. Sometimes the chimp gets out, and if you ever read a book called The Chimp Paradox, you'd understand what I'm referring to there when I say sometimes the chimp gets out. And obviously you need a good temperament, I suppose, to being a solicitor, or indeed to any career or profession. So like, none of us are perfect, and certainly I'm not perfect, so that's the story there. Can you just go through the PIAB process for a personal injuries claim? Yeah, I mean, you must go through the PIAB process for a personal injury claim in the first instance. If it's a psychological or psychiatric injury, though, that you're complaining about, or that you wish to canvass, then you must go to the Injuries Board, but they won't deal with it. They'll issue you with a letter of authorisation. That letter of authorisation will then allow you to bring legal proceedings through the courts. That's what's necessary there. But you do need to commence all personal injury claims through the Personal Injuries Board. How do you keep trespassers away? David Cannan is asking me. I don't know how you keep trespassers away. I mean, clearly, if you have a difficulty with people tramping or entering into your land or your premises or whatever, you have to take whatever security measures that you can in order to safeguard your property and so forth. But in terms of keeping them away, you're always going to have bad actors, I suppose. So you need just to take the best precautions that you can. Over 40s life navigational. We answered that question there. Princess, what advice would you give to a newly qualified solicitor in this job climate? I'm not really sure, to be honest with you. I've never really had a job as a solicitor, because once I qualified, I became self-employed then, so I was kind of on my own. I've never actually worked as a solicitor for somebody else. I worked obviously as an apprentice or a trainee, but not as a solicitor as such. So I'm not really sure what advice I'd give to you in relation to the current jobs climate. What I would say though, in general, in relation to any job, or indeed being a self-employed person, or doing whatever you want to do, your attitude is key. Your attitude is absolutely vital in my view. So if you have a good attitude, you'll get on fine as a solicitor, as an accountant, as an engineer, as a bookkeeper, as a cleaner, as a road sweeper, if you have a good attitude. If you haven't got a good attitude, then you're in trouble, in my view. Are we in a bubble? But Gilson is asking, are we in a bubble? I'm not sure what you're referring to, Bajilson, whether it's a property bubble or a stock market or shares bubble, and I'm not sure what market you're referring to either, whether it's the Irish market, UK market, United States market, or Irish market, and so on and so forth. So I'm not too concerned about the particular market that I'm in at any particular time. I'm not too concerned either about the timing. I'm concerned about getting good value. So if I'm buying a share or buying a property, I'm looking for good value, and I don't care what everybody else is doing, and I don't care what the market is doing generally, because when I go to sell, I'm not selling the market, I'm selling a property, or I'm selling a share, and I can either get more for it or I can't than what I paid for it. Dr. Alan M. Hurley, cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, thoughts on investment and current valuation. My personal opinion, Alan, is that I am steering clear of Bitcoin. Blockchain is a great technology, and it has great prospects in terms of property, in terms of contracts, in terms of the legal industry, and I expect the world to be a different place in 20 years' time with the use of blockchain. And I look forward to that, and I will be embracing it, even though I'm maybe a known man, but I'm not going to be putting my hard-earned money into cryptocurrency or Bitcoin now, or indeed any cryptocurrency, simply because I like to invest in things that I know. So I invest in Smurfits, they make cardboard boxes. I invest in Ryanair, they sell airline tickets. I invest in Twitter, Google, Amazon. I know what these people do, I know what these companies do. Amazon are firing out packages all over the country. We can see it every day of the week. Cement Roadstone Holdings and so on. All of these companies are companies who sell goods or products that I understand, and I'm happy enough to invest in them. But cryptocurrency, no, it's not for me. Cayman Row, thanks for your video, it's very informative. Saving for a deposit currently. We'll be looking to buy in a year's time. The buying process seems fairly daunting. Where to start? Contacting the bank. The buying process isn't daunting if you simplify the thing. You need to get the money arranged, and you need to get a half decent property. After that, then you're in the hands of the solicitor, and you're in the hands of the bank to a great extent. If it's a second-hand property, you're looking at getting a structural survey done. After that, then you proceed. You're going to rely on a solicitor, and if he makes a balls of it, quite frankly, then hopefully that'll never arise. But if it does, there is professional indemnity insurance in place, and so on and so forth. So you need to control the controllables. You need to look after what you can look after. But I wouldn't be too daunted. I would attend to the process and forget about the outcome, in other words, and try, if I was you, to try and get the money together by hook or by crook. Conleth Kennedy, buy over build in terms of property. Which you think is a better choice in this current economic climate? It's very hard to know, Conleth. Depends how economically you can build and so on. It depends on your site cost, depends on your building cost and so on. I've done both. I've bought and I've built, and I'd be slow enough to sort of give you a direction one way or the other. It really depends on all the circumstances. It depends on your site and so on. As a first time buyer, obviously if you're getting a site from your parent or something, fine, you're going to build, and it'll probably make more sense. Certainly if you're getting a site for free or whatever. But I mean, if you have to go and buy a site and start building and you're a first time buyer, you might be as well off just to buy a safe and steady 3-bed semi at the outset. Dip your toe into the water, as it were, of the market, the property market, and take it from there. Michael O'Donnell, regards to employment claims, would you generally advise against adding a separate claim for stress? Does the WRC draw a certain inference from this, and could it actually damage the case? Not really sure what you're asking there, Michael. The WRC, you can throw in stress all day long. People are doing it all the time, but the WRC can't deal with a stress claim really. It's a personal injury claim that goes to the Injuries Board. The other claims that go to the WRC are statutory breaches or breaches of statutory employment entitlements. So you can throw in stress all right, and it might add a bit of colour to your claim, but to be honest with you, I don't think it's going to add or amount to a hill of beans, quite frankly. Alan Wardlaw, I was offered a 2-bed, 2-bath apartment in Balbriggan for 120,000, possibly 130, just getting it paid out of the family home of about, it's on the main street over shop. Is this a good investment? Alan, I'm too long in the tooth to be giving you advice about this property, about which I know absolutely nothing. So I'll kick the touch on that one. I can't tell you whether that's good advice or a good investment or not. And anybody who's going to have a YouTube live, a video, and answer questions and give you advice on that, I'd be careful enough, to be honest with you, if I was you. Sean O'Sullivan, I'm currently in disagreement with my work and feel I have a smoking gun, but they're still denying my claim. Why do companies behave like this? Companies behave like this because you may think you have a smoking gun, but maybe you don't. Maybe you're firing blanks. You are in a disagreement with your work, but your difficulty is this: work is based on the old master-servant relationship, and the employer is in quite a strong position, notwithstanding all of the employment law legislation and so on and so forth. So I'd be careful if I was you. Dr. Hurley, many thanks for your thoughts, no problem. Paul O'Shea, you're lying about Bitcoin. The Law Society hate Bitcoin because there's no legal tender attached. They have no jurisdiction over it. Sam Paul O'Shea, that is absolute horseshit. But anyway, we'll move on. Sam David, hi Terry, enjoy your investment videos. Any thoughts and opinions in investing in cryptocurrency such as Bitcoin? Would it be something you have your eye on? Cheers. As I've already said, no, cryptocurrency is not for me. I have no interest in it. But if Paul O'Shea and fellas like him want to wade in, fire away, but just don't expect me to do it. I'm being asked for my opinion here. My opinion is I'm going to steer clear of it. Kate D, what advice would you give to a landlord whose tenant is overholding commercially? You don't have much choice, Kate D. You go to court and you get an order to get them evicted, or you come to some sort of a deal, some sort of an arrangement, some sort of terms. So that's really it. Ronan RMS, hi Terry, is it a fraud when a person proposed a partnership in company taking money and refused to sign a contract? Firstly, you can't really propose a partnership in a company because a company is by definition not a partnership. There is a shareholding, there may well be a shareholders agreement which may well be advisable, but it's not a partnership. So I don't know what representations or promises may have been made to you, but in the normal course of events, then people change their mind and things don't turn out the way you might expect them to turn out. So it wouldn't necessarily follow that it's a fraud. It may well be part of some sort of a robust negotiation or whatever, or it could be fraud. I don't know, but you're going to have a hard time proving fraud in a situation like that. You're better off chalking it down to experience, in my view, and moving on. Catherine Madge Douglas, hi Terry, if you're working a full-time job and you work part-time paying taxes on both jobs, can you get paid redundancy for the part-time job? You can be made redundant from a part-time job, yeah, or you can be made redundant from any job, and obviously your length of service is going to determine how much you are going to get by way of redundancy. Have you ever gone for a scoop in Frank Ryan's? I don't know where Frank Ryan's is, Bajilson, but I've gone for a scoop in a fair few pubs in Dublin, quite frankly, and I really like the ones on the north side. But my favourite actually is one that I go to every year with my wife. We get the bus up from my home place and we get buckle drunk on a day, and we get the bus, and it's a harmless bit of fun. But that particular pub is the Oval, it's the one there beside Easton's, the side entrance to Easton's on Middle Abbey Street. I like that place, just it has a feel and I just like it. It's kind of a prosaic rather, or prose rather than poetry, if you think about drinking in terms of prose rather than poetry, that's the place for you, Paul O'Shea says you're lying. That's the end of Paul O'Shea. Colin F. Kennedy, can you talk a little bit of setting up your own business as a means creating another income stream, and what support in terms of funding you can utilise? Setting up your own business as a means of creating another income. I mean, obviously you can set up your own business, and I wouldn't be too concerned, to be honest with you, about funding you can utilise, because I've spent my whole life starting businesses and selling businesses and hustling and grinding, and I've never got a cent from the state. So the most important focus I think you should have would probably be on the business. The success of your business is going to come down to you. It's going to come down to your attitude. It's going to come down to the actual concept, etc. So rather than worrying about funding or where you might get funding and so on and so forth, I'd be more concerned about the meat and potatoes of the business. Is it a good one? Can you get punters? Can you make sales? That's how you make a business. Kieran Dunn, hi Terry, I wonder what your thoughts are on the Judicial Council adjourning their discussion on personal injury awards until March. Seems a lot of a disagreement in the ranks. Yeah, this is a hot potato, and I'm not going to wade in here and leave myself open to all sorts of criticisms. I know the judges, or certain judges, I think probably have concerns about the way that debate is going, but it's not something that really concerns me. The law is the law, and all I'm going to do is hustle and grind, try and get clients, and whatever the law is, the law is. That would be my attitude. But I do know that there's a lot of populism, a lot of populist shite, quite frankly, on Twitter and so on, about personal injury claims and that sort of thing. And I'd be afraid of a pendulum swing in the other direction, where people who are genuinely injured and are genuinely suffering personal injuries, etc., as a consequence of somebody else's negligence, are being looked down upon or are not being compensated for the negligence of other parties. And that's what the law is supposed to do. It's supposed to redress the balance and give some justice, etc., etc. Dara O'Rourke, advice for a 22-year-old graduate in 2021. Love the videos. Thanks, Terry. Dara, my advice to you is never tie your lace in a revolving door. No, I don't have any advice. I mean, your attitude, if there was one piece of advice, I'd say have a good attitude. And if you don't have a good attitude, you're going to be in difficulty. Thomas Walsh, hello Terry, I have about 40k of savings that I'm willing to invest in property, commercial or private. What is my best way to get into this when my business was only set up about a year ago? Well, if you've 40 grand in savings, Thomas, you've done well. It's up to yourself what your particular skills are. I mean, if that was me, and if turning back the clock to 1986 or 87 when I started, I took on a shop unit and with my brother Pat, and we worked really, really hard, and we invested in a property, but we built a business in it, and we did really well out of it. We doubled our money in a relatively short period of time during a time of pandemic, or time of recession rather. So it depends on your skills, it depends on your skill set, it depends on how hard you're willing to work, it depends on your personal circumstances and so on. You could buy a residential property, you could buy a commercial property. There's any number of things you can do, and property investment is all about two things: A, capital, and B, imagination. And you're better off having a lot of imagination than a lot of capital, because you can always get the capital, whereas you can never get the imagination, in my view. Kate D, do you see any benefits from raising ROT pre-contract in conveyancing now, or has it slowed down the whole process? ROT pre-contract in conveyancing. The process now, I don't think, has disimproved. If anything, it probably has improved. Obviously, we're getting pre-contract or we're getting replies to requisitions and so on in advance now, and the thing is not too bad. I mean, it's down to human nature, I suppose, and people actually getting the contracts out in time, getting the title documents in time, being advised by their clients that they're selling, and that the solicitor can get onto the bank, and that the bank let out the deeds and so on. So the process is not too bad theoretically, but it is down to human actors a lot of times. Khadijesh, what career change would you advise in this pandemic? I worked in hospitality, but as first sector it gets hit in crisis. That's a difficulty. I mean, I can't give you any career advice, quite frankly. I really can't tell you, but I know I'm just very lucky insofar as in my game I am have been unaffected, quite frankly, and I know I'm very, very lucky, because if I had a pub or if I had a coffee shop or a restaurant or whatever, I'd be in serious difficulty. And I mean, 12 months of sitting, not being able to trade would absolutely kill me. You know, I've worked very, very hard for 35, 36 years, whatever, and it would kill me to be sitting on the sidelines for 12 months. Thankfully, in the game I'm in, I don't have to do that, so I've been lucky. But I can't give you advice as to career change, I'm afraid. I'm not that, I just can't do that. What journey to success? Hi Terry, what warrants a judge to accept a preparation time cost order against the respondent? How does the respondent have to behave to meet this? I'm not really sure what you're asking me there, journey to success. What warrants a judge to accept a preparation time cost order against the respondent? I don't know what context you're talking about there, what type of a case, you know. Now we need to... Would you be my solicitor for buying €160,000 house, County Cavan? I'd be happy to, yes. And I've had a good bit of property myself in County Cavan from time to time. I've had sites, I've had a pub in up around Belturbet and so on. So look, no problem. Daniel, or send me an email if you want, and I can give you a quotation if you like. Daniel or Diary, hi Terry, what are the legal costs of bringing unfair dismissal claim to WRC? It depends who's acting for you, Daniel. I mean, my typical cost, quite frankly, or my typical fee for a WRC claim would be in the region of $2,500, and that's for preparation and submissions and representation on the day and so on and so forth. That's for a WRC hearing. But other solicitors, other barristers, etc., I don't know what they're charging, so you need to make your own inquiries there. Princess, Terry, please block Paul O'Shea permanently from your channel. He's rude and very offensive, unacceptable. Absolutely, I agree with you, Princess. James Hopkins, institutions are hedging their bets as far as crypto. 2.5% of liquid assets invested, 80% in BTC and 20%, and I read the white paper for both. Sound advice, don't invest in what you don't understand. Look, that's my philosophy, James. I'm not ramming my philosophy down anybody else's throat, but I like when I buy shares in Smurfits. I know they're making cardboard boxes. I've been in the factory, I've been down the road, I've sold sandwiches to their employees. I know what they do, so I'm happy buying shares in Smurfits. I'm happy buying shares in Amazon, in Twitter, in Snapchat and so on, because I know what they're doing. Crypto, don't really know. Requisitions on title, sorry Katie, yeah I understand Kate, replies to requisitions. Look, it makes it handier, alright, absolutely, and the fact that they're prepared in advance is a good move, it's certainly no harm. David Canan, what is the best way to pass on a property portfolio to your kids from an inheritance and tax point of view? Well, I'm not really sure about that now, David. I mean, it depends on the value of the property portfolio. Obviously your kids have, is it 335 or 350 grand or thereabouts of an exemption, so each child probably has that, I think, and you could, I suppose, split it up, but it depends on the value of your portfolio. There may well be tax planning that you can do, and you can set up a trust and get all really fancy and so on and so forth. I'm, a solicitor and an entrepreneur, and I've been in business for a good while, but obviously I'm not going to wade into complex tax advice, so I'll have to kick the touch on that one, David. Sam David, any thoughts and opinions where we are, Ireland, in relation to COVID-19? What gives you hope in going forward for the future, and how can we scale back from the populist nonsense, mostly on the right? Yeah, I hate populism. I hate populism on the right, and I hate populism on the left. My thoughts on the COVID-19 are, we are where we are. We need to do what we can in terms of following the public health advice, and I think we need to let the vaccine rollout take its course, and I think we really need to behave like adults and be patient. We don't have any choice. People are whinging and whining about, you know what I mean, I can't put up with much more of this, etc. What's the option? What is the alternative? We're going to let the bloody thing rip and look at our parents and our grandparents and so on die in nursing homes, and look at the hospitals fill up and hospitals ICU units fill up and so on and so forth. That's not a possibility. So we're all pissed off and we're all tired. We've all had enough. But there is no game in town apart from the vaccine and rolling it out, and the UK are no further on than us, I think, But yeah, populist nonsense pisses me off, quite frankly, and whether it's coming from the right or coming from the left, but there is an awful lot of horseshit there, and about the anti-vax and anti-wearing masks and all that bullshit. I mean, with these tinfoil hat wearing conspiracy theorists, like, Jesus Christ, get a life, you know. Anyway, Thomas Walsh, thanks for the answer. I'm a hard worker and always looking for the next opportunity. The problem I'm thinking with getting into property is getting money off the banks, and I'm only in business a year. I don't think there's any difficulty there, Thomas. I got money off the banks and I wasn't in business at all. I mean, the bank is going to give you money if they think they're going to get their money back. That's the key thing. Will you be able to pay it back? So can you persuade the bank that, regardless of being in business for only a year, are they likely to get the money back? If you can put a compelling proposition to them, or indeed to anybody else, that, you know, you lend the money to me and you'll be getting it back along with interest. That's how banks make money. So banks need lads like you to lend money too, because that's how they make money, and that's why loan offers and loan packs come in here all the time. Books that inspired you and you have learned from a lot. I learned a lot from Peter Lynch's investment books. There's 2 investment books there that I recommend highly to do with shares and so on, but I've read a lot of books then over the years about property investment and so on and so forth as well. But Peter Lynch's books, something on Wall Street, I can't remember, Beating the Street or something it's called, and there's another one. They're very, very similar, but they're good books. Sound investment principles, that's the sort of principles that I teach in my investment course. Peter Hennessy, hi Terry, how much capital gains tax do you pay when withdrawing money from the gyro? Depends how much of a capital gain you make, Peter. You only make a capital gain when you have a disposal, and you only have a capital gain when you have a disposal at a price that's far greater than your acquisition cost. So it depends on how much of a capital gain you have, but in Ireland I think the capital gains tax rate is 33% or something like that, not 100%, and the cost of acquisition is important, because you may have a number of shares in a company and you may not have bought them all at the same time, and so there's cost averaging and so on and so forth that you might have to do depending on the timing of when you bought the share. So, you know, that's not an easy question to answer, and to be honest with you, I'd be getting on to my accountant at the end of the year and saying, look, here's the shares that I sold, here's the ones I made a gain on, here's the ones I made a loss on, and I'd let him do that thing, you know. Name calling, what about Sweden? India, no lockdown since July. Bullshit. Would you represent a mask debater if they asked you to go to court? Firstly, I don't go to court much, but I would represent anybody who would need representation. That would be no difficulty, because I don't agree with everybody who comes in here, and I represent them. I may have a different view completely, but I am a professional and I would provide representation, provided I was paid, quite frankly, and that's the way it goes. Terry, Billy Buchanan, hi Terry, I have savings of just under 200 grand. I've just received planning permission to build a house where I grew up in Meath. Jesus, you have savings of 200 grand, fair play to you. But now I'm thinking that money could be put to better use if I was to... I don't know, Billy, you're in a lucky position there. Obviously, if you've received planning permission, it's up to yourself whether you want to build that house or whether you want to sell the site. There could well be a planning condition there to do with occupancy for the first number of years, etc. So you'd need to have a look for that. David Canan, thanks for your help, Terry. Keep up the good work. It's much appreciated. Thanks, David. Billy Buchanan. You have savings of just under 200 grand. That's grand. Invest in property and let it out. I'm self-employed and currently single, so I'm not in any real panic to build. Any advice would be greatly appreciated. It's up to yourself, Billy. I mean, that's really a lifestyle choice. You're in a very, very lucky position, obviously, that you have 200 grand in savings, and you're in a lucky position as well that you can build a house with planning permission in County Meath. That's a site that's worth a few bob, so that's worth that is worth a few bob, so it's up to yourself really. Now, Sue's name calling, what about Sweden? India, no lockdown. What about Sweden? Like, that's such a ridiculous, trite comment. What about Sweden? Sweden, my arse, because Sweden were flag carriers for all sorts of knuckle draggers, quite frankly, and conspiracy theorists, and yet in the heel of the hunt things went badly wrong for Sweden, and they weren't seen to be any more enlightened than any of the rest of us who were following the World Health Organization advice. Opinion on foreigners in IE. I have no problem with foreigners in IE. I presume you refer to Ireland, and I have no difficulty with foreigners. I think it's great for the country, and I think it's great for anybody who comes in and builds a life here. I know that Irish people have gone all over the world from time immemorial, and made livings and made good lives for themselves in all sorts of countries all over the globe. So I have no problem with foreigners whatsoever ever in Ireland. Ariana Wagner, love your videos, Terry. Thank you, Ariana. Bajilson, what industries would you consider investing in a post-COVID world? Well, I have shares in Ryanair, and I was listening to BBC Radio 4 there this morning, a business programme, and EasyJet is after experiencing an absolute massive surge in the last couple of days in airline tickets because of the British government's approach or promise that from June onwards things will be rocking and rolling in the UK. So, I think that airline tickets, perhaps even hotels and so on, may well bounce back, and it may well be a good time to do a bit of bottom fishing, as it were, if you were looking to buy a few shares, and perhaps look at the industries that might show the greatest amount of recovery. But airline tickets and hotels perhaps would be areas that would be worth a look at. Ariana Wagner, I'm not sure. Any tips on trying to get planning for a septic tank? Looking to buy an old house with no water or waste systems. I don't know why you'd be looking to buy a house with no water or waste, because you're going to have to bore a well, and you're going to have to install some sort of a treatment system or some sort of a septic tank. Obviously, for planning for a septic tank and EnviroCycle or BioCycle units and so on and so forth, you're going to be at the mercy of the local authority. So you're going to have to deal with the local authority, get planning permission, and you probably will have a percolation test and so on and so forth. Princess, what are your views on the bank's negative interest charge on client account and solicitor's practice? I don't really have a view on that, Princess, and to be honest with you, I haven't really looked into it. I may well have a strong view at some point in the near future, and I know that the Law Society, the president, or I think it's the president of the Law Society, is campaigning hard and writing letters and encouraging us as solicitors to obviously campaign with our local representatives or public representatives, but I'm not really 100% about the negative interest charge on client account and solicitors practices at the moment, so I don't have a strong view on that. Need to get a drink of water there. Questions are drying up there now. So a lot of questions about property, a lot of questions about shares and so on, but if you have any other questions now, don't be afraid to put them in there. But I mean, any sort of conspiracy theory bullshit, you can keep it. I have no interest in it whatsoever, and I look forward to doing a review of an upcoming court case there where the Supreme Court is going to be dealing with certain issues arising from the introduction by the government in the public interest to order our affairs in such a way that we actually look after each other. So looking forward to the outcome from the Court of Appeal, I think it is, in the John Waters and Gemma Doherty case. If you have a house that was destroyed in a fire, can you build again without planning? I've just discovered that the bloody microphone was actually over there, so I hope I'm not lifting you out of it there now with the volume. But anyway, if you have a house that was destroyed in a fire, can you build again without planning? No, don't think so, Conrad. I think you will need planning. I think you will need planning, yeah. Jeff S. We are looking to rent in Ireland with a view to buying at a later date. LL will need references, but then we've been homeowners for 30 years, self-employed and are retiring. what refs would be acceptable. We're looking to rent in Ireland. It's hard to know what sort of references will be acceptable, Jeff. I mean, obviously it's going to come down to the individual landlord. It depends what part of Ireland as well that you wish to choose or wish to rent in. Obviously landlords are going to make their own judgment when they meet you and so on, and sometimes landlords will actually just get a feel for a person, like we all do, and decide that they are perfectly happy to take whatever references you might have. So I wouldn't be too concerned about that. I've no thoughts on GameStop, Bajilson, none whatsoever. On the subject of populism, if Sinn Féin were to ever enter government, what would their left-wing economic policies drive private enterprise and jobs of Ireland? Well, Sam David, certainly if Sinn Féin were to act on the largesse that they are promising in opposition, then it would be a difficult enough job balancing a budget every year and so on. But perhaps they would discover that when they're in government, what they said when they were in opposition could be two completely different things, but that remains to be seen. I mean, maybe, and let's face it, looking at the opinion polls and so forth, they're going to get a chance sooner rather than later, but let's see what happens. But the populism nonsense, that's up to themselves, you know. I mean, people will buy it hook, line and sinker to a great extent, and then they discover that they were sold a pup, and then they'll spend 5-10 years complaining about Sinn Féin, Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael, you name it. You know, you can insert any political party you like there. I mean, didn't Lucinda Creighton have a political party that promised the sun, moon and stars for a while and then disappeared off the map? So, Sean O'Sullivan, have you ever encountered a professional who was sucked in by the anti-vaxxer types? I don't think I have, Sean. I mean, the anti-vaxxers, I mean, obviously there is the occasional or some professionals who have an opinion and who have sort of a out of left field or a minority opinion, and they're entitled to their opinion, but vaccines have done a very good job for people in general on the face of the planet, so I wouldn't be too concerned about an outlier view or a minority view or whatever, provided that the public health advice is generally being followed, and thankfully most people are following along with it and so on. Jeff S., what would be a reasonable offer on a property of say €200,000, as we wouldn't want to insult a vendor? Well, you need never worry, Jeff S., about insulting a vendor, because you know, they should be thick-skinned enough to know that it's just a negotiation and it's nothing personal, and that's just the nature of it. So 200 grand, it depends on the property. You could offer 180, 185, but it will depend on the property. It'll depend on the condition, and it'll depend on other things as well, as to whether there's any work to be carried out, etc., etc., you know. What mistakes you made in 2008 crisis and things you learned from that? In 2008, I suppose, I mean, I didn't really make any mistakes. I wanted to change a lifestyle, and I ended up building property in Longford, and I wanted a lifestyle change, and I got it. But then the market crashed, and obviously had a huge effect on me, huge effect on my circumstances. I lost all my capital, everything I'd earned up to that point. But rather than the mistakes that I learned, it compelled me then, with my back to the wall, to go and study law at a mature age and do something that I absolutely love. And so you make the best of it. But that goes back to what I said at the outset of this video. Your attitude is key. And I could have spent a lot of time watching, or I could have spent a lot of time whinging and giving out about the politicians, about the banks, about the Europeans, about the Americans, about you name it. What have you got? But instead, you know, you can pick yourself up and just do your best and maybe have another go at something else. And that's how it worked out for me. So that'd be my view. TT Terrible. Hi Terry. Other than the guards, what options can be taken to stop another person contacting another using social media or any other communication devices? The individual already asked verbally to stop. You could go to a solicitor and have a letter written, and you could probably threaten some sort of legal proceedings, some sort of civil proceedings, to do with nuisance, private nuisance, public nuisance, perhaps something of that nature, or if it was defamatory or if the comments were being made public. It's hard to know. But the options, you could report to the guards and maybe that'll have the desired effect, but it's hard to know, and it's hard to know exactly what the nature of the problem is there. Do you think inflation will kick in soon? David Canaan asks. I don't think so, David. That's just my own view. But I'm not an economist. Thomas Ruan says, hi Terry, great channel. I'm a homeowner with mortgage with one investment property with small mortgage. How do I fund second investment property? Pay off first investment property and leverage that. You could, Thomas, yeah. You could go to the bank and you could tell them what you want to do, and it's in their interest to lend money, and how they make money is by lending money. So you could go and go around to the various banks, go to a broker as well, and see what options might be available to you. They'll be anxious enough to lend the money if they have security and if they think they're going to get the money back, because, as I say, that's how banks make money, Mr. Nice, when taking ex-employer to ET, I presume you're referring to Employment Tribunal, or in the UK for automatic unfair dismissal. I have no idea, Mr. Nice, about UK law. I'm not a UK lawyer. I'm not qualified in the UK. Know nothing about the UK, and we don't have an employment tribunal here. We have the Workplace Relations Commission, so I can't answer that question, I'm afraid. Sam David, thanks Terry. I worry about our political trends. I work in IT. We've got a lot of bright young talent, and I hope we can build an environment which is pro-enterprise and pro-business. I hope so as well, and I think generally, quite frankly, that the Irish people are fairly sensible and fairly smart, because I think if you look at how Ireland does and how Irish people do generally on a worldwide basis, I think generally we actually perform quite well and we punch above our weight. For a small little country, I think we do well, so I think we probably mightn't give ourselves enough credit from time to time. Sometimes we give ourselves too much credit, like we're the best fans in the world and all that stuff, but sometimes we mightn't give ourselves enough credit and mightn't just recognise how well we've done since, for example, the crash of a number of years ago, 10, 11, 12 years ago, and how the economy has bounced back. Like, that's a fair old turnaround, especially when you consider the clamour at the time that we should just be bankrupting ourselves. We should refuse to pay everybody. And I think Sinn Féin were advancing that proposition, that we should just let the Europeans and the banks and everybody else go swing and not pay them back. But I think that the folly of that sort of advice, that proposition, is to be seen now. And let's face it, look what happened in Greece when they tried to do that. Like, Merkel, soon put an end to that. And then your man, the fancy-ass economist, driving around on his Harley Davidson in London when Greece was burning, he's making a career now as a media man or something, isn't he? Anyway, yes, Employment Tribunal. Employment Tribunal in the UK, Mr. Nice, don't know anything about it. Sean O'Sullivan, on average, how often for employees gets favourable outcome at the WRC? I don't know what the win statistics are, Sean, and I don't know whether those statistics exist or not. I do know that the WRC produce a report every year, and they set out the number of claims and the types of claims and so on and so forth, but I don't know the win-loss rate for employees. Conlett Kennedy, I'll be on to you anyway once I decide what I want to do in terms of property. Thanks, Terry. That's grand, Conlett. Good stuff. You can send me an email or whatever and we can get the show on the road then, So that's it. What is it, 16:40? I have time for a few more questions there, another 20 minutes or thereabouts. So if you have any more questions, I am happy enough to take them. And if you find it useful, or if the video useful, and if you find it, I would appreciate if you gave it a few likes or thumbs ups there or whatever, because it helps with the algorithm, which obviously is owned by Google, which is in turn owned by Alphabet, and I'm a shareholder. But anyway, that's by the by. Obviously, investing in shares in the likes of Alphabet, which is the sort of legal name for Google and Google's enterprises, and the likes of Amazon and the likes of Twitter and so on, they're decent enough investments. they're decent enough investments. And let's face it, we all know that the likes of Amazon and the likes of Google are probably going to continue growing, but we also know that the likes of Smurfits making cardboard boxes and so on and so forth are probably going to do fine as well. They're around a long time, and the likes of Cement Road's done and so on. So when do you think the WRC will be back fully? I don't know, Michael, when they're back. I do know that I'm going through at the moment. I am going through virtual hearings there at the moment, and they're regular enough. Every week, every second week, they're regular. And quite frankly, the virtual hearings are not too bad. I thought they'd be a bit of a shitstorm initially, but they're actually quite good, and they work out quite well. And from my perspective, certainly, it's great to be able to actually conduct a virtual hearing from here without moving from the office. It saves me a hell of a lot of time and so on. So it's not nearly as bad as you might think at the outset, Thomas Rowan, any tips on how to safely grow a property portfolio for income down the road 15 plus years? Thomas, you need to start. It's like how do you eat an elephant? Like one bite at a time. So you need to start with one property, and you need to start with one decent property and take it from there and build up, and hopefully you do okay. But it depends on what sort of a property portfolio you're looking at. It depends on whether it's residential or commercial, and so on and so forth. So it's difficult to be prescriptive in this setting. Billy Buchanan and Terry, if you had 200k in the bank, what would you do with it? I mean, in terms of investment, not just buying an expensive car. Thanks, the channel is great. Billy Buchanan, I would invest in shares. I would invest in UK shares, to be honest with you. That's what I would do with it. Now, I would spread it around, but I have a little portfolio there of UK shares, which I got into about 3 months ago, and I checked yesterday, and they're up 28%. And I took the view about 3 months ago that the twin storm of Brexit negotiations and the fears over Brexit and going off a cliff and the COVID-19 shitstorm depressed unnecessarily or in an exaggerated way UK share prices, and I bought blue chip UK shares. So I bought Vodafone, I bought Barclays Bank, I bought Lloyds Bank, and so on, and I have a 28% gain. So I'm not giving investment advice here, but if you look around you, you can draw your own conclusions, and I think the UK economy will bounce back fairly well. So I've had 200 grand. At the moment, I probably would put it into shares. I would have a portfolio, and I'd spread my risk a bit across different shares and different types of company and so on and so forth. But that's what I'd probably do now. Having said that, if I was 23 years of age again, or 25 years of age, and I had 200 grand, I wouldn't put it in shares. I'd put it into property, and I'd hustle and grind and build a business that way, some sort of a property investment situation. Conleth Kennedy, are you worried about anti-monopoly policy in terms of big tech in the American market? Not really at the moment, although there is obviously a huge, there is a lot of questions being asked about the likes of Google and Facebook and their power, and let's face it, their power is absolutely significant, and all you have to see or look at is what the Facebook is doing there, or has been doing, with the Australian government and that dispute. So something will have to be done, all right, in terms of creating boundaries, reasonable boundaries that society can live with, and which the social media companies can live with as well. But obviously the pendulum may have swung a bit too far in terms of the likes of Facebook and the amount of power that they had, which was manifested in that muppet Trump being elected. Thoughts on retroactive taxation on pub payments? Don't really have any thoughts on that. I mean, I think we all should be paying tax, and the reason we all should pay tax is because I think some of us are stronger and better than others, and I think we should all contribute in some way to looking after people who are less fortunate than us, who are less capable than us, who are less lucky than us, who fall on hard times. And I think that's the very simple way and the basic way that I look at taxation. I think we should all be chipping in for that. So I don't have any issue, to be honest with you, about that. Have you ever accidentally turned yourself into a cat on a virtual hearing? Into a cat? No, I haven't, Sean. Not yet anyway, touch wood, but hopefully it won't happen next week. There I have another WRC hearing coming up there next week. Could you see an avalanche of employment claims coming down the line due to COVID? I don't think so, Michael. That's just my gut. Worker number 67. I worked in a place that had no health and safety in place, no manual handling, no accident report book. I suffered an accident at work and I'm now taking a case in High Court. Well, more luck to you, and I hope the case works out for you, and I hope you can prove negligence. If that's the way the situation was, well then the employer is certainly going to have a hard time resisting your claim and avoiding liability, but I hope the case works out for you. Will the lack of an ability to formally report the accident at work against me in HC? No, it won't, shouldn't, I don't think, because obviously the lack of an ability to formally report it, that sort of system should be in place, put there by the employer, not necessarily by you. Now, if you went though and did nothing at all and sat on your hands and popped up then sometime later and claimed you suffered an accident but never told anybody, that would be a slightly different situation. But if there was no system for reporting accidents and there wasn't a safe place of work and no accident report situation, no health and safety officer, perhaps no safety statement, then all of that will reflect poorly, I think, on the employer. Sarah Jane M. For persons seeking career change, look towards businesses that were closed or positively affected by the past year. Tech, care, food, retail, Springboard, SkillNet, etc. Offer free or funded courses. That's a good idea, Sarah Jane. That's a good contribution. Yeah, absolutely. For anyone seeking a career change, have a look there at what Sarah Jane has to say. But there is courses and SkillNet offering free or funded courses. And tech companies are willing to train you if you're willing to learn. Going in at the bottom will be lower paid, but you rise up and ask them to set you a training and development plan. That's fair enough, and that's good comment. Yeah, absolutely. And that all comes back to what I've said already. Your attitude is key. If you have that sort of an attitude and you're going into a place and you want to hustle and grind, you want to work hard, you want to progress, you want to learn, you'll do fine, and the company will recognise you for that and will recognise your ability and your willingness and attitude. And that's the one thing that I would always look for in any employee. On your point about Ireland doing well globally, I think an area Ireland is doing quite well in is online learning courses and training, especially in computer science. Sam David, yeah, absolutely, you might be right there. But I think the Irish educational system is very good, and I think Irish young people especially, are very well educated, and I think generally Irish people have a good attitude, and I think we do punch above our weight generally, you know. Amit Taware, do we need to pay tax on capital gain? Yes, we do, Amit. We have to look after people who are less fortunate than us, and we need to fund guards or police, we need to fund the hospital service, we need to fund public services and so on, and that's how we do it. The money doesn't grow on a money tree, it grows from people like you and me paying taxes, contributing into a central fund and hoping to Christ that the government and the civil service look after the money all right and distribute it to people in a fair way and look after it and not squander it. My landlord asking to increase rent. Is it allowed in pandemic? If not, what are my options? Amit Tawari, I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure whether your landlord is a commercial or residential, and you haven't said. I mean, if it's commercial, he's entitled to ask you to increase rent. If he's residential, I'm not sure. He can probably ask you anyway. He probably can't impose a change, and I do know that there's a sort of a moratorium there at the moment from the Residential Tenancies Board in relation to evictions or terminations of residential letting agreements and so on and so forth. So there probably is a good bit of leeway there in terms of a good bit of protection. I mean, can an international student take FE1? Young Keith Lim. I'm not sure. I am sure you can, young Keith Lim. You'd want to check with the Law Society. I don't know. I'm just a solicitor and I'm just a guy who tries to make a living as best I can. Irla O'Sullivan. Any tips on how to get around qualifying for a loan for a buy-to-let property? Minimum down payments are super high and you need to have a relatively high income to qualify. Not really, Irla, and I'd be slow enough to give anybody advice about how to get around minimum loan payments or mislead the banks or anything. I do know a fella one time though, and I know I did it myself actually, that when I was starting off, I went to the credit union and borrowed a few bob, and then I slapped that money into the bank. And then after a little while with the bank, I looked to borrow money there, and I said, look, I've saved all this money, I want to borrow a few bob off you. And, you know, I got away with it then. I wouldn't recommend it. I misled them, yes, absolutely, hold my hands up. But a friend of mine was good at that as well, and we used to go to the credit union, borrow money, put it in the bank, and then say, look, we've saved this money. So, but I wouldn't recommend that now, Irla. No, I've no guidance there. Sean O'Sullivan, did you ever consider politics, or do you think you're too straight talking for it? I think, Sean, I'm too straight talking for it, and if you knew how many people I'm after removing from this chat, from this live chat, and banning, as it were, I think that I probably wouldn't have the tolerance or the patience for it. I have an interest in it, all right, and I observe what's going on, but it probably wouldn't be for me, you know. Dan Barna, I've just bought my first BTL property. Thanks for your advice. Jesus, Dan, I hope it works out. Would you recommend getting an accountant for my books, or trying to learn how to do them myself? Your first buy to let, Dan, shouldn't involve too much bookwork in terms of accounting, etc. I mean, obviously you're going to have to make a return every year to the Revenue Commissioner's Case 5 income, but all you need is your accountant, etc. So, you know, I don't think there's any huge learning involved there. Your accountant should be able to tell you fairly quickly, you know, in a one-page email or whatever, what you can write off, what you can't write off, and so on and so forth. But if it's just a buy-to-let property, it's a 3-bed semi or whatever, or 2-bed apartment, then it should be relatively straightforward, and I wouldn't be too concerned about the books, but I would be concerned about ensuring that you're kosher with the Revenue Commissioner. So I would ensure to get an accountant every year just to do the return for you. You should be able to do that. There's plenty of people providing a good service, bookkeepers. I come across them all the time. Robert MacDonald, what are the grounds for the retention of a deposit? What do they have to show to keep it? That, presumably, Robert, is to do with residential property. What they have to show is that you have damaged, if you're the tenant, not saying you are, I'm not saying you damage anything, but they have to show damage to the property. So the landlord can't retain a residential deposit, residential letting deposit, for anything other than damages to the property. That's my view. That's my understanding, rather. And that's what the purpose of the deposit is for. Gary Lloyd, when leave is granted in a judicial review case, what is the next stage? Do you apply again for judicial review? The next stage, I can't really remember, Gary, and I haven't done any judicial review cases. But no, the leave is granted, so you then, I think, go ahead with your case. And the next stage is basically to present whatever it is, whatever arguments you have in relation to seeking whatever remedy you're looking for. So you have to get leave first, you're absolutely right. And after that, then you have a hearing. Don't think the hearing is on the same day, but it will be coming soon after that. And it follows on from the leave being granted. A renter security deposit, yeah, that's fair enough. In buying property with land, if there are only verbal rights of way from decades ago, no rights of way written in the folios, is there some other checks I should do to be, say? That's a difficult situation there. You need to be careful there, and I've just been reviewing a case there before I started this live stream about rights of way and so on. I mean, you will have people claiming that there's rights of way going back years and years and years, but you really do have to register them to be sure of your rights and to assert them and have them registered on folios and so on. And that will come down to applications to the Property Registration Authority, and those applications will be supported by affidavits as to use over the years. And the more people you can get who will swear up and say, yeah, we were all going up and down that road there with asses and carts and loads of turf, etc. for years, the better, you know. Dagan Actas, hello there Dagan. Vincius Schmidt, hi, Vinny here. I started to follow your channel a few weeks ago. Amazing work, thanks for sharing your knowledge with us. Thanks, Vinicius Schmidt. Your advice for first-time home buyers, please. Just save plenty of money. Amit, yeah. What classic novel would you recommend on reading? Well, if you're into law, I would recommend reading Bleak House. If you wanted to get in just to reading old classics and you wanted to start perhaps with Dickens, I would recommend Oliver Twist. Bleak House is very good from a classic point of view or from a legal point of view. So I like Thomas Hardy's novels as well, but I like all Charles Dickens novels. They are an acquired taste, but I think, like cheese and beer, they're a taste worth acquiring. So TT Terrible. Hi Terry. Will any solicitor provide a cease and desist letter, or does the plaintiff need to seek out a slander and harassment solicitor for a person who has verbally claimed slander of another person? TT Terrible. Any solicitor will do that because any solicitor can provide you with a letter. Now, you can't go to a solicitor and say, I want a letter written to such and such a person without some basis for it. In other words, you can't just ask a solicitor to work on a sort of a secretarial basis for you and write letters at your behest, because if there's no basis to it, a solicitor does have a professional duty to behave professionally and can't be sending threatening letters to people if there's no reality to it, if there's no grounds on which to send such letters. So it will depend on the circumstances, but you don't need a specialist cease and desist solicitor or slander and harassment solicitor, no. And it's defamation anyway you're looking at, if that's what you claim. Craig, hi, I've recently went self-employed and will be looking to buy my first house in the future. What is the best way to go from here? Thanks. Craig, obviously you need to save a few bob or get the money together for a deposit, and then you need to go rock up to the bank and get finance arranged, and they'll tell you how much they're prepared to lend, if anything. They will look for accounts, especially if you're self-employed. And if you've only become self-employed, you may be in difficulty because they may be looking for perhaps 3 years self-employed records, etc. So you're going to have a problem there if you've only just started becoming self-employed. So you might have a problem there. But look, at bottom line is you need to sort out the finance situation first, and then you need to find a property. Vinicius Schmidt, I have one question. Do you think variable mortgage rates will increase or decrease in the long run? Vinicius, having a bulls, to be honest with you. I mean, obviously, variable mortgage rates are low at the moment. Mortgage rates generally are low, so I wouldn't have any difficulty. And I have a kind of a philosophy that if you really need the money, you're not going to be really caring whether it's 4% or 5% you're paying it at, if some bank is prepared to give it to you. In other words, if you need money to buy a house or to buy a shop or to buy a premises or to build a business, then paying 4% or paying 5% won't amount to a hill of beans. That's my view, you know. Cian Neeland, would you recommend emigrating to the US for some sort of trade, or should I stay in Ireland? To the US, I don't know why, Cian, you'd emigrate to the US for some sort of trade. I'm not sure what trade you're referring to there. I mean, should you stay in Ireland? Again, that's a lifestyle choice, you know. You're going to have to decide that yourself. Dagan Actas. I'm a bit late if you mentioned earlier. Sorry about that. Any advice for buying a rental property in Ireland? You just need to get the money together, Dagan, and you need obviously to arrange finance, and you need to buy a property in an area that's going to let. Now, at the moment, quite frankly, there's such a shortage of rental properties that you can rent anywhere, anything, anywhere. That won't always be the case. So, Delta Phi, thanks Terry for being a source of sanity, especially these days. Yourself and Luke O'Neill give me hope the world hasn't gone mad. Thanks, Delta Phi, and that's actually a very good note to finish on, because I am a great fan of that Luke O'Neill fella. I think he's fantastic. He's a great attitude, and he has such a positive attitude that he is an antidote. He is a vaccine for all those knuckle draggers, the tinfoil hat wearing conspiracy theorists. So that's it. It's 5 o'clock there now. I'm going to call a halt. Look, if you got anything useful in this live stream, you might just leave a comment below and encourage me to do it again or whatever, and leave a like. I'd really appreciate it. Thanks a lot. Okay, going to call a halt there now. Thanks for dropping by, and thanks for your contributions. Thanks for your supports. Kieran Esther, 16 years old, and I have a dream of being a property developer, but I know you can't just do the leave insert and become a property developer investor. So what do you think I should study in college? Kieran, it doesn't make any difference really what you study in college, because you will be able to make it if you have the right attitude and you get a half decent education. But what I would recommend is you do go to college and you do get a degree, at least a bachelor's degree, and after that then the world is your oyster, because knowledge is power, education is power, and I'd recommend that very, very strongly. So you have plenty of time on your side. Thanks a lot, lads. Give the thumbs up down below. Thank you.